Trump appears to be sleeping. His head keeps dropping down and his mouth goes slack.
Donald Trump's first day in criminal court included him falling asleep, slack-jawed, his mouth hanging open, reportedly, according to New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman. You couldn't write a crazier situation. After all of this, Trump falling asleep in court, and he says Joe Biden is Sleepy Joe. You call your opponent Sleepy Joe, and you fall asleep with your mouth agape in a court of law. New York Times report. A weary Trump appears to doze off in courtroom ahead of criminal trial. The former president flashed signs of irritation at times, but also seemed to fall asleep before jolting back awake. An incredible little detail is that apparently one of Trump's lawyers was passing him a bunch of notes, and Trump was sleeping, and eventually Trump startled awake to a whole bunch of notes in front of him from his lawyer. Here is Maggie Haberman appearing just before 1 p.m. in the East yesterday to tell Jake Tapper he seemed to be sleeping.
Trump appears to be sleeping. His head keeps dropping down and his mouth goes slack. Tell us about that.
Well, Jake, he appeared to be asleep, and repeatedly his head would fall down. There have been other moments in other trials, like the Agent Carroll trial, which was around the corner in January, where he appeared very still and seemed as if he might be sleeping, but then he would move. This time, he didn't pay attention to a note that his lawyer, Todd Blanche, passed him. His jaw kept falling on his chest, and his mouth kept going slack. Now, sometimes people do fall asleep during court proceedings, but it's notable given the intensity of this morning.
Yeah, one of the things that this reminded me of is one of the things that is sometimes included as a story element in, these authors like Lee Child and Harlan Coben type writers. They write the page turners you often find in an airport and read in their entirety on a cross-country flight, is to add intrigue after some crime has been committed. I think there's a Lee Child story I read, which is like this. The police show up at the believed perpetrator's home, and the guy is just dead asleep in bed. And it's so incongruous that someone who just supposedly committed some mass murder or terrible crime, the intensity, adrenaline would be running high. You'd be hopped up, that you would be so asleep. And it's sort of a similar situation of what they're describing here with Trump. Trump is fighting for his, what we might call his life of freedom here, where if he were to be sentenced to prison, it could be effectively a life sentence. And he's falling asleep. So, of course, the questions go to, is this guy a complete and total sociopath? Is this guy so confident in his innocence and his lawyers that he's just not worried? Or is it a medical issue that is causing him to fall asleep in this way? Here is Maggie Haberman later last night, interviewed by Caitlin Collins on CNN, and indicated that Trump was glaring at her, presumably because he was furious that he reported that he was sleeping.
I was reading along to see what they were talking about.
And there's a pool in there, so there's someone sending basically dispatches to us as we're sitting outside.
And that's what I was part of, was the pool.
And you were actually in the room for that. At one point, the pool said that he was glaring at you for several seconds. You had reported shortly before that during a break that he appeared to be falling asleep at one point as the proceedings were getting kind of tedious. Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, I noticed it. He made a pretty specific stare at me and walked out of the room.
I've been on the receiving end of said glares.
I know you have. I have too. I reported earlier that he had appeared to fall asleep. Now, we had seen him, and I want to be clear that I've seen lots of people fall asleep in courtrooms. I've seen jurors fall asleep. I've seen judges fall asleep. If anyone falls asleep who's a criminal defendant in a case, we're going to report on it. But he doesn't like when such things are reported, and I'm guessing, I don't know, that's what this was about.
So anyway, Trump falling asleep in court. He did wake up and deliver some statements when he exited. Let's talk about that next. For a long time, when I had a computer problem, I'd go on YouTube and Reddit and try to figure it out. And it seemed like the advice that is given 95% of the time is download Malwarebytes and that'll clean everything up for you. So I have been using Malwarebytes in real life for years, long before they became a sponsor, simply because Malwarebytes is way more than just an antivirus. It catches things other antivirus programs miss. With Malwarebytes, you have comprehensive real-time protection against malware, spyware, other malicious attacks that could jeopardize your privacy and personal data. It can detect and remove existing malware already on your devices with its best-in-class free scan, which is something traditional antiviruses lack. And now you can get identity theft protection as part of a bundle to keep your family's personal information safe with live monitoring, alerts, recovery assistance, and up to $1 million in identity theft protection. Malwarebytes has a special deal they're doing just for the David Pakman Show. You can get any Malwarebytes subscription for 50% off. That's half off at malwarebytes.com/Pakman. The link is down below.